The blazing African sun beat down on the bustling Kumasi market as hundreds of vendors called out their prices. Colors exploded everywhere. Bright fabrics, golden jewelry, and fresh fruits piled high in wooden crates. But in the middle of this beautiful chaos, something outrageous was about to happen. Marcus Williams stared at his expensive watch and snapped his fingers impatiently. This bold businessman wore a designer suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. His leather shoes gleamed as he slammed his briefcase down on a fruit vendor's table. "Move faster," he barked at the elderly seller. "I don't have all day." The vendor's hands trembled as he quickly bagged mangoes. But Marcus wasn't satisfied. His eyes burned with shameless arrogance as he grabbed the bag and tossed only half the payment on the table. "That's all you're getting," he sneered. "Your fruit isn't even worth that much." Behind him sat a small figure wrapped in torn cloth. The homeless woman looked tiny against the market chaos. Her weathered hands held an empty bowl, and her eyes stayed fixed on the ground. She was so quiet, so still, that most people walked right past her without a second glance. But not Marcus. Something about her presence annoyed him. "Get out of my way," he snapped, kicking dirt in her direction. The woman didn't move fast enough for his liking. His face twisted with fury as he shoved her shoulder hard, sending her tumbling sideways. Her empty bowl crashed to the ground, the sound echoing through the sudden silence. Gasps filled the air. Shoppers stopped mid-conversation. Vendors stared in shock. A mother pulled her child closer, whispering prayers under her breath. Even the market dogs seemed to sense that something terrible had just happened. "Pathetic," Marcus snarled, brushing imaginary dust from his sleeve. "Learn your place." The homeless woman slowly pushed herself up, her torn dress now covered in dust. But something strange happened. Instead of tears or anger, a small smile crossed her weathered face. Her dark eyes sparkled with a light that didn't match her shabby appearance. She whispered something so quietly that only the wind could hear. "You have no idea who you just touched." Marcus had already stormed away, his expensive shoes clicking against the stone path. He was too arrogant to notice the way other vendors stared after him with disgust. Too shameless to see how the woman's eyes followed his every step with an astonishing calmness. The crowd slowly returned to their business, but whispers spread like wildfire through the market stalls. Some people pointed in the woman's direction, their voices filled with concern and outrage. But if Marcus had stayed just one more minute, if he had looked back just once, he might have noticed something that would have changed everything. The homeless woman's fingers weren't just dirty. They bore the faint tan lines of expensive rings that had been removed. Her posture, when she thought no one was looking, was perfectly straight and confident. Little did he know, she was no ordinary woman lurking in this shocking market incident. This unbelievable twist in what seemed like a simple African billionaire story was just beginning to unfold. What do you think will happen next? Can you guess who this mysterious woman really is? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And if you've ever witnessed someone being cruel to a homeless person, share your story. You might be surprised by what others have experienced too. 2. The mysterious retreat. The homeless woman walked away from the market chaos with steps that seemed too graceful for someone living on the streets. While Marcus continued his outrageous behavior at other stalls, she moved through the shadows like smoke, vanishing between vendor booths with practiced ease. She found a quiet corner behind the spice sellers, where the air was thick with cinnamon and cardamom. Here, hidden from prying eyes, she pulled out an object that would have shocked anyone watching. A sleek smartphone that cost more than most cars. Her fingers moved across the screen with the astonishing speed of someone very familiar with technology. The phone didn't have a single scratch, despite her appearing to live on the streets. As she typed, her secret smile grew wider. "Phase 1 complete," she whispered into the phone. "The target has taken the bait perfectly." On the other end, a voice responded with immediate respect. "Yes, Mrs. Adebayo. Your security team is standing by. Should we proceed to Phase 2? Mrs. Adebayo." Even the name carried hidden power that Marcus couldn't have imagined. She observed the market from her hiding spot, watching as news of the incident spread from person to person like ripples in a pond. "Not yet," she replied, her voice carrying authority that completely contradicted her shabby appearance. Let him dig his hole deeper first. I want to see just how arrogant he really is. She planned each move like a chess master, 20 steps ahead of her opponent. This wasn't the first time she had tested someone's character by disguising herself as homeless. It was a trick she had learned from her grandmother, that you only see people's true nature when they think you have nothing to offer them. The torn dress she wore was a costume. The dirty hands were makeup. Even the weathered face was partially created by Hollywood-level special effects. But the sadness in her eyes when Marcus kicked her, that was completely real. She smiled as she remembered similar encounters. Politicians who promised to help the poor, but sneered at homeless people, business leaders who spoke about charity, but ignored suffering right in front of them. Each time, she had found ways to teach them unforgettable lessons about respect and humanity. But Marcus felt different. His shameless cruelty wasn't just ignorance, it was pure evil. He had shoved her not out of impatience, but out of genuine pleasure in causing pain to someone he saw as powerless. Mrs. Adebayo, the voice on the phone continued, "Your car is ready whenever you need it. The helicopter is also fueled and waiting." She observed Marcus through the crowd, watching as he continued to terrorize vendors with his bold arrogance. Her fingers drummed against her phone case, a habit she developed during decades of running a business empire that stretched across 3 continents. This street to riches story wasn't just about her rise to become one of Africa's wealthiest women. It was about using that wealth and power to teach lessons that textbooks never could. Every encounter like this was a chance to show arrogant people that dignity and respect weren't luxuries. They were requirements for being human. Phase 2 begins in 30 minutes, she whispered into the phone. Make sure our friend Marcus learns exactly what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. As she vanished deeper into the market shadows, preparing for the next part of her plan, Marcus remained completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. This hidden billionaire had just set in motion events that would humble him in ways he never thought possible. The astonishing hidden power he had just insulted was about to reveal itself in the most unbelievable way imaginable. 3. Arrogance escalates. Marcus stormed to the market like a hurricane of entitlement, his rude behavior growing worse with each interaction. The incident with the homeless woman had only fueled his sense of superiority, making him feel powerful and untouchable. At a jewelry stall, he grabbed a golden bracelet without permission, examining it like he owned the place. The elderly jeweler stared nervously as Marcus sneered at the craftsmanship. "This garbage is overpriced," he barked, tossing the bracelet back carelessly. It crashed against other pieces, sending them scattering across the display table. "You people have no idea what real quality looks like." The jeweler's hand shook as he carefully gathered his precious items. Years of work and family tradition lay scattered because of this careless man's ignorant behavior. Other customers backed away, not wanting to become targets of Marcus's furious temper. But something interesting was happening in the background. Whispers followed Marcus everywhere he went. Vendors pointed in his direction, their voices filled with disgust and growing anger. Word was spreading about what he had done to the homeless woman. "Did you see how he kicked her?" One spice seller whispered to another. "Shameless," replied a fabric vendor, shaking her head. "That poor woman never hurt anyone." Marcus remained blissfully ignorant of the growing storm around him. His shocking arrogance had made him completely blind to how others saw him. He strutted through the market like he owned every stall, every product, every person. At a food vendor's booth, he demanded free samples of expensive imported honey. When the vendor politely explained that samples weren't free, Marcus exploded. "Do you know who I am?" he screamed, his face turning red with rage. "I could buy this entire pathetic market with my pocket change." He slammed his fist on the wooden counter, making jars of honey rattle dangerously. The vendor recoiled in fear, but stood his ground with quiet dignity. "Sir, please calm down," the vendor said softly. "We treat all customers with respect here." "Respect?" Marcus laughed coldly. "You want my money, but you won't give me basic service? This is why your country stays poor. No business sense." His words stung like poison. Several customers gasped at the outrageous insult. A young mother covered her child's ears. not wanting him to hear such rude language. But Marcus wasn't finished. He grabbed a jar of honey and held it high above his head. "Maybe I should teach you a lesson about customer service," he threatened. Just then, something caught his eye. 3 well-dressed men in dark suits had appeared at the edge of the market. They weren't shopping or browsing. They were watching with the focused attention of security professionals. For a moment, Marcus felt a flicker of unease, but his arrogant personality quickly pushed the feeling away. He was too important, too powerful to worry about a few random strangers. "You're all pathetic," he snarled at the honey vendor, slamming the jar back down. "I wouldn't waste my money in this dump anyway." As he strutted away, the 3 men in suits followed at a distance. Marcus was too ignorant to notice, but every vendor in the market saw them. Some smiled knowingly. Others whispered prayers that justice was finally coming. The market drama in Africa was reaching a boiling point, but Marcus remained completely unaware that his unbelievable arrogance had already sealed his fate. His shocking disrespect hadn't gone unnoticed by the right people. In a quiet corner of the market, someone was making final preparations to teach him the most humbling lesson of his entire life. His careless cruelty to a homeless woman was about to cost him everything he thought made him superior. The 3 security men continued their silent surveillance, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the astonishing truth about the woman he had so carelessly kicked. 4. Clues about her true identity. While Marcus continued his shameless reign of terror through the market, the homeless woman had maneuvered herself into a perfect position to observe his every move. But she wasn't alone anymore. A young market worker approached her hiding spot, his eyes wide with astonishing recognition. Instead of treating her like a beggar, he bowed his head respectfully. "Mrs. Adebayo," he whispered, careful not to draw attention. "I can't believe you're here like this. My family owes everything to your scholarship program." The woman, Mrs. Adebayo, smiled gently and placed a finger to her lips. "Sure, Samuel. This is between us for now." Samuel's reaction was immediate and powerful. His hands trembled as he realized he was talking to one of the most influential people in all of West Africa. The Adebayo Foundation had built schools, hospitals, and clean water systems across dozens of countries. Her secretive philanthropy had changed millions of lives. "But why are you dressed like—" Samuel stammered, unable to finish the question. "Sometimes," Mrs. Adebayo whispered, "you learn more about people when they think you have nothing to offer them." As they spoke, more people began to notice her presence. A nurse from the local clinic approached cautiously, then gasped when she recognized the face beneath the makeup. "Dr. Adebayo," she whispered in shock. "The woman who funded our entire medical wing." Word spread through a secretive network of people whose lives had been touched by Mrs. Adebayo's hidden generosity. A teacher whose school had received new computers. A farmer whose crops had been saved by her irrigation project. A young entrepreneur whose business had grown thanks to her surprising mentorship program. One by one, they gathered in a loose circle around her hiding spot, their faces filled with remarkable respect and gratitude. But they kept their voices low, understanding instinctively that something important was happening. "He has no idea," whispered an elderly man whose grandson had received life-saving surgery through Mrs. Adebayo's medical foundation. "That arrogant fool just kicked one of the most powerful women in Africa." Mrs. Adebayo watched Marcus through the crowd, her dark eyes calculating every move. She had built her empire from nothing, starting with a single food cart in this very market 30 years ago. Back then, she had faced the same humiliating treatment from arrogant customers who thought poverty meant powerlessness. "Mrs. Adebayo," whispered a security guard who had been pretending to shop for fruits, "your legal team is ready. One phone call, and we can have him arrested for assault." She shook her head slowly. "Arrest is too easy. He needs to understand what he's done, not just face consequences." The circle of grateful people watched in astonishing silence as their benefactor prepared to reveal her true identity. Many of them had never seen her face before. She preferred to help from the shadows, letting others take credit for her generosity. A young girl, no more than 8 years old, approached with surprising boldness. Her school uniform bore the logo of the Adebayo Academy, one of the finest educational institutions in the region. Mama Ade, the child whispered, using the affectionate name that thousands of scholarship recipients had given her. Why is that mean man allowed to hurt people? Mrs. Adebayo knelt down to the child's level, her hidden wealth evident in the graceful way she moved despite her costume. Sometimes, little one, she said softly, arrogant people need to learn that respect isn't something you buy with money. It's something you earn by treating all people as equals. The child nodded solemnly, then surprised everyone by pointing directly at Marcus. Are you going to teach him a lesson, Mama Ade? Mrs. Adebayo smiled with the confidence of someone who had built business empires and toppled corrupt governments through sheer determination. Oh, yes, my dear, she whispered. I'm going to teach him the most life-changing surprise he's ever experienced. The hidden billionaire was ready to reveal herself, and this street encounter shock was about to become the most talked-about story in African business history. 5 tension peaks. The afternoon sun was beginning to set when Marcus made his most devastating mistake yet. His arrogant behavior had reached a boiling point, and the entire market seemed to hold its breath as he approached a fruit vendor's elderly mother. The old woman sat quietly in the shade, peeling oranges for her grandchildren. Her weathered hands moved slowly, each motion careful and deliberate. She hadn't bothered anyone, hadn't even looked in Marcus's direction. But her peaceful presence seemed to enrage him even more. Move, he barked, pointing at her small stool. I want to sit there. The woman looked up with confused eyes. She spoke only the local dialect and didn't understand his harsh English words, but his aggressive tone was clear enough. Please. Her daughter-in-law pleaded in broken English. She is old. She cannot move fast. I don't care. Marcus screamed, his face twisted with shocking cruelty. Tell this old hag to get out of my way. The word hag rippled through the crowd like electricity. Even people who didn't speak English understood the tone of pure disrespect. Gasps filled the air. Children pressed closer to their parents. Vendors stopped their work entirely. Marcus grabbed the elderly woman's arm and yanked her upward with brutal force. She cried out in pain and stumbled, her oranges scattering across the ground like broken dreams. That's when everything changed. The 3 men in dark suits stepped out of the shadows. Their leader, a tall man with military bearing, spoke into a small radio device. Phase 3 is authorized, he said quietly. The target has crossed the line. 20 more security personnel materialized from nowhere. They had been disguised as shoppers, vendors, even children playing in the market corners. Now they formed a perfect circle around Marcus, their movements coordinated like professional military operation. Marcus staggered backward, his arrogant confidence cracking for the first time. What is this? He stammered. But the real shock came when Mrs. Adebayo rose from her hiding place. The torn dress fell away like a magic trick, revealing an elegant business suit underneath. The dirty makeup dissolved under professional makeup remover that her security team had provided. In less than 30 seconds, the homeless woman had transformed into one of the most powerful figures in African business. The market fell into absolute silence. Marcus stared in complete shock, his mouth hanging open like a broken door. His brain couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. The woman he had kicked, shoved, and humiliated was now standing before him in a designer suit that cost more than his car. No, he whispered, backing away in horror. This can't be. Mrs. Adebayo walked toward him with the confident stride of someone who commanded boardrooms and government meetings. Her security team followed at a respectful distance, their presence making it clear that she was no ordinary person. Let me introduce myself properly, she said, her voice carrying the authority of billions of dollars and decades of power. My name is Dr. Amar Adebayo. I believe you, and I have some unfinished business to discuss. The elderly woman Marcus had grabbed was helped to her feet by 2 nurses who had appeared from a crowd. Her oranges were carefully collected by children who whispered prayers of gratitude that justice was finally coming. Marcus collapsed against a market stall, his legs unable to support his weight. The humiliating realization was crushing his arrogant spirit like an avalanche. This isn't happening, he gasped, his hands shaking uncontrollably. This is some kind of mistake, some kind of nightmare. But Mrs. Adebayo's presence was undeniably real. The stunning transformation from homeless beggar to billionaire businesswoman was the most shocking twist the market had ever witnessed. The unbelievable encounter was about to reach its climactic moment, and Marcus Williams was finally about to learn what happened when you underestimated the wrong person. Mrs. Adebayo stood before Marcus like a powerful queen, revealing herself to a foolish peasant. The transformation was so complete, so astonishing, that several market vendors rubbed their eyes to make sure they weren't dreaming. "Allow me to properly introduce myself," she said, her voice commanding the attention of every person within 100 meters. "I am Dr. Amar Adebayo, founder and CEO of the Adebayo Group. Perhaps you heard of us." Marcus's face drained of all color. The Adebayo Group wasn't just famous, it was legendary. Their businesses stretched across mining, technology, healthcare, and education throughout Africa and beyond. The company's net worth was over $15 billion. "Impossible!" Marcus gasped, his arrogant confidence shattered like glass. You were just a homeless woman. I kicked you. Yes," Mrs. Adebayo replied calmly, stepping closer with the grace of someone accustomed to commanding respect from world leaders. "You kicked me. You shoved me. You called me pathetic. You humiliated me in front of all these good people." Her security team spread out in a perfect formation, their professional training evident in every movement. These weren't ordinary guards. They were former military specialists who protected one of Africa's most important figures. Mrs. Adebayo, her head of security, spoke quietly. "Shall we begin?" She nodded once, and immediately the market transformed into something resembling a high-level business operation. Hidden cameras that had been recording Marcus's behavior all afternoon were revealed. Professional sound equipment emerged from concealed positions. "You see, Mr. Williams," Mrs. Adebayo explained, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "I make a habit to test people's character. I disguise myself as someone powerless to see how they treat those they think can't help or hurt them." She gestured to the crowd of people surrounding them. "These vendors, many of them attended schools I built. That nurse, she works in a hospital my foundation funded. The security guards, they graduated from training programs I established." Marcus stared in growing horror as he realized the scope of what was happening. Every person he had insulted, ignored, or mistreated throughout the day was somehow connected to the woman he had assaulted. "The elderly woman you grabbed?" Mrs. Adebayo continued. "Her grandson received life-saving surgery through my medical charity. The honey vendor you threatened? His business thrived because of microloans from my development program." She pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. News alerts were already spreading across social media. African billionaire reveals identity after market assault, and shocking twist. Homeless woman was secret business mogul. No, Marcus stammered, falling to his knees as the full weight of his actions crashed down on him. "I didn't know. I had no idea." "Exactly," Mrs. Adebayo replied with icy calm. "You had no idea because you never bothered to see me as a human being worthy of basic respect." The market crowd watched in absolute fascination as one of the most powerful women in Africa confronted the man who had dared to assault her. Phones appeared everywhere, capturing every moment of this historic confrontation. "Your behavior today has been recorded from multiple angles," she announced. "Kicking a homeless person, threatening vendors, grabbing an elderly woman, insulting an entire culture. The world will see exactly who Marcus Williams really is." Marcus tried to crawl away, but Mrs. Adebayo's security team blocked every escape route. There was nowhere to run from the consequences of his shameful actions. "Please," he begged, his arrogant mask completely stripped away to reveal the pathetic coward underneath. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" "Oh, but you did mean it," Mrs. Adebayo corrected him. Every cruel word, every violent action, that came from who you really are when you think no one important is watching. She turned to address the growing crowd of onlookers, her voice carrying like a powerful speech to the nation. "Let this be a lesson to everyone," she declared. "Wealth, power, and status mean nothing if you don't treat all people with dignity and respect. The person you ignore today might be the one who controls your future tomorrow." The shocking identity reveal was complete. The African billionaire twist had turned a simple market encounter into a legendary story of humbling, arrogant people. Marcus Williams was about to learn that some mistakes can never be undone, and some people are far too powerful to cross. 7. The customer's humbling. Marcus knelt on the dusty market ground, his expensive suit now stained with dirt and tears. The realization of what he had done crashed over him like a devastating wave, washing away every trace of his former arrogance. "Mrs. Adebayo," he stammered, his voice shaking with terror. "Please, I beg you, I didn't know." "Stand up," she commanded with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed by presidents and prime ministers. "Groveling won't erase what you've done." Marcus struggled to his feet, his legs trembling like a newborn colt. Around him, hundreds of market vendors and customers had gathered to witness this unprecedented scene. Their faces showed a mixture of justice and amazement at seeing such a powerful reversal of fortune. "Your actions today," Mrs. Adebayo continued, "have consequences that extend far beyond this market." She nodded to her assistant, who stepped forward with a tablet computer. The screen displayed Marcus's business information, his company details, and his financial connections. "Williams Import-Export," she read aloud. "Interesting. It seems your company relies heavily on African suppliers for 60% of your inventory." Marcus's face went completely white. His business empire, everything he had built over 15 years, depended on relationships with African manufacturers and distributors. If those connections were severed, "Please," he whispered, finally understanding the true scope of his catastrophic mistake. "My employees, my family, they depend on that business." Mrs. Adebayo studied him with the calm assessment of a surgeon deciding where to make the first cut. "Now you think about other people? Interesting timing." She turned to address the crowd, her voice carrying the weight of absolute moral authority. "This man kicked me when he thought I was powerless. He grabbed an elderly woman. He insulted your culture and your dignity. What should be his punishment?" The crowd murmured with angry voices. Some called for his arrest. Others demanded financial compensation. But Mrs. Adebayo raised her hand for silence. "I could destroy his business with a single phone call," she announced. "I could have him arrested for assault. I could ensure he never works in international trade again." Marcus sobbed openly now, his proud facade completely shattered. The humbling was total and devastating. Everything he had believed about power, wealth, and superiority was crumbling around him. "But," Mrs. Adebayo continued, "I believe in second chances for people who truly learn from their mistakes." She approached him directly, standing so close that he could see the wisdom and strength in her eyes. "You will return to your country and establish a foundation to help homeless people. You will donate 50% of your company's profits for the next 5 years. Marcus nodded frantically, desperate to accept any terms that might save him from complete destruction. "You will personally volunteer at homeless shelters every weekend. You will learn the names and stories of the people you serve. And you will never, ever forget what it feels like to be powerless." The life-changing moment was reshaping Marcus's entire understanding of humanity. The arrogant businessman was becoming something different, someone humbled by an astonishing life lesson he would never forget. "Do you accept these terms?" Mrs. Adebayo asked. "Yes," Marcus whispered, his voice broken but sincere. "Yes, I accept. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I've done." Mrs. Adebayo smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. "Then you've learned the most important lesson of all. True power comes from lifting others up, not knocking them down." The humbling, arrogant customer had experienced an amazing transformation. This life-changing moment would follow him forever, ensuring he never forgot the day he learned what real power looked like. 8. The shocking ending. As the sun began to set over the bustling Kumasi market, Mrs. Adebayo prepared to vanish as mysteriously as she had appeared. Her security team efficiently packed away their hidden equipment, while Marcus stood in stunned silence, forever changed by the encounter. "Remember our agreement, Mr. Williams," she said, handing him a business card with only a phone number on it. "My people will be watching to ensure you honor your commitments." Marcus took the card with trembling hands, knowing it represented his only chance at redemption. "I won't let you down," he whispered, his voice filled with genuine remorse. But as Mrs. Adebayo turned to leave, something unexpected happened. A young girl from the crowd ran forward and tugged at her elegant suit jacket. "Mama Ade," the child whispered, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Why do you hide who you really are?" Mrs. Adebayo knelt down to the child's level, her expression softening with genuine affection. "Because sometimes, little one, the most important lessons can only be learned when people think no one important is watching." The child nodded solemnly, then surprised everyone by whispering something that sent chills through the entire crowd. "Will you teach the mean president a lesson, too? He was rude to poor people on TV yesterday." Mrs. Adebayo's eyes sparkled with mischievous intelligence. She glanced at her security chief, who smiled knowingly and nodded. "Perhaps," she whispered back to the child. "It's time for another field trip." The crowd gasped as they realized the implications. If Mrs. Adebayo could disguise herself as a homeless woman to test arrogant businessmen, what else might she be planning? "My dear friends," Mrs. Adebayo announced to the gathered crowd, standing with the commanding presence of someone who had toppled corrupt governments and built empires from nothing. "This is just the beginning." She pulled out her phone and showed the screen to everyone. Social media was exploding with videos of the confrontation. Hashtag Secret Billionaire and hashtag Market Justice were trending worldwide. News outlets from CNN to BBC were already requesting interviews. "This story," she continued, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy, "will travel to every corner of the world. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities. They will all hear about what happens when you mistreat people you think are powerless." Marcus watched in growing horror and fascination as he realized he had become part of something much larger than a simple market incident. His humiliation was becoming a global symbol. "But here's the real secret," Mrs. Adebayo whispered to the crowd, her eyes twinkling with unbelievable mischief. "This wasn't my first time doing this." The market fell into absolute silence. "Last month, I was a cleaning lady in a government building in Lagos. A corrupt minister kicked me out of his way. Today, that minister is building schools for poor children and doesn't know why his mysterious benefactor chose him." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Phones appeared everywhere as people recorded every word of his astonishing confession. 3 months ago, I was a street sweeper in Accra. A wealthy businessman threw trash at me and called me worthless. Now he runs the largest environmental cleanup program in Ghana and still doesn't know who inspired his change of heart. Mrs. Adebayo walked slowly through the crowd, her presence magnetic and powerful. "I have been a beggar testing charity, a waitress testing kindness, a taxi driver testing respect. Dozens of encounters, dozens of lessons taught." She stopped directly in front of Marcus, who was staring at her with complete awe and terror. "You, Mr. Williams, are simply the latest in a long line of people who needed to learn that every human being deserves dignity. But you're also special. You're the first one whose lesson will be broadcast to the entire world." The implications hit Marcus like a thunderbolt. He wasn't just facing personal consequences. He was becoming an international example of what happens to arrogant people who abuse the powerless. "The beautiful part," Mrs. Adebayo continued with a mysterious smile, "is that somewhere right now, there's another arrogant person watching the story unfold on social media. Tomorrow, I might be disguised as their gardener or their security guard, or even their driver." She laughed softly, a sound that sent chills of excitement through the entire market. Imagine living every day knowing that any person you mistreat might be someone powerful enough to change your entire life. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. This wasn't just a story about justice. It was a revolution in how people thought about power and respect. Mrs. Adebayo walked toward her waiting limousine, which had appeared silently at the market's edge. But she paused at the door and turned back one final time. "Marcus Williams," she called out, her voice carrying across the entire market. "Remember this day. Remember how it felt to discover you had gravely underestimated someone. And remember that somewhere out there, another secret billionaire might be watching to see if you've truly learned your lesson." As her limousine disappeared into the African sunset, the crowd stood in stunned silence, processing the unbelievable twist ending they had just witnessed. Marcus remained frozen in place, clutching the business card, knowing his life would never be the same. The homeless woman he had kicked hadn't just been a billionaire. She had been the architect of an entire movement to humble arrogant people across the world. And somewhere in the distance, another disguised billionaire was probably already planning their next lesson for humanity. The secret billionaire had vanished, but her message would echo forever. Treat every person with respect, because you never know who might be watching. This unbelievable twist ending to the African Tale's shocking story would be remembered and retold for generations to come. Moral lesson: never judge people by their appearance or status. Treat everyone with respect and kindness because you never know who they really are. True power comes from lifting others up, not putting them down.